Welcome, PM Sports Talks, and we're here back again with another video. It's been a while, but so basically what I wanted to do with this video is I wanted to start a series where we're discussing the floor and the ceiling of every NFL team just based on division. I got this idea for Tom Grossi. I'm sure if you're watching NFL YouTube videos, you've probably heard of him, but he does this yearly, and I thought it was a pretty cool concept, so I thought that I would share my take on it and just going division by division. Just releasing these videos, hopefully daily. Shouldn't take too long to edit these, but with that being said, let's just get into it. So the first team and division we're doing is the NFC East. Thought this would be something that's pretty close to home. Me being someone who's from Texas, always grew up a Cowboys fan before they started horrifically disappointing me every year. But in last place, I think will be the New York Giants. And so the Giants, they're a very interesting team. They added a lot of really good divisions that you think would make a team a lot better. They added players in the secondary like Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo. They added Abdul Carter through the draft and Darius Alexander on their defensive line, which I think will be really, really good. And I think their defense will take big strides this year. Their offense, they didn't add too much. They drafted Cam Scadaboo, I believe, the 4th round, so hopefully that might help their running game. They obviously added Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. So their quarterback room should be better than a year before. The issue with the Giants is that they, I think, undoubtedly have the hardest schedule in the entire league. Obviously, they're already in a tough division where they face teams like the Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Washington Commanders, and the Cowboys, who, although probably not as good as the other two teams, the Giants just can't seem to beat, as I believe they've beat them 2 times since they've drafted Dak Prescott. So in general, I really wouldn't be shocked if they went 1-5 in their division alone. But then they've also got other hard matchups against the NFC West with matches against the 49ers, as well as going against the AFC West, against the Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, and Chargers, all teams that I think will be superbly good. And so with that, I think that just shakes out to a very unfortunate situation for the Giants, where I think they're very limited by the division they're in, and their schedule, even though I think that they're on paper a far better team. So with the New York Giants, I would put their floor honestly as low as 3-14. I really don't know how Daboll is going to be able to keep his job after this. But I do think that they do have a high ceiling if they can really beat these tough opponents and get a win streak. But I think they only have a ceiling of about 9-8. I really think that that's the only scenario where Brian Daboll could end up keeping his job. And if they lose those close matches against those big opponents but show some fight, but I do think that Daboll and Joe Shane will end up getting the can after this year. And so, next up, 3rd place in the division, I do have the Dallas Cowboys. They're an interesting team. They added quite a few sneaky additions, I feel like. Obviously, everyone knows they added George Pickens. They added Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, which I don't think will help their running game much. I think they should have kept Rico Dowdle, but for whatever reason, Jerry Jones chose not to. They had a very good draft. A lot of people know they drafted Tyler Booker, who was pretty well known by his Alabama teammates as that kind of Will Anderson figure in terms of leadership, which is something you always want to bring in. He's a very young prospect, so I think he will have his kind of welcome to the NFL moments, as you've probably heard from other NFL YouTubers, playing in a division against players like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Dexter Lawrence. He's going to have some big challenges, and the Cowboys don't have the particularly easiest schedule, but I think hopefully he'll be able to adjust well, and I do think no matter what, it's going to be kind of hard to live up to Zach Martin's shoes. But they also drafted Shavon Revel in the 3rd round, who I thought was a very good NFL prospect. I think he fell partially due to his age, as well as his injury history, as I believe he tore his ACL at Eastern Carolina, I believe he came from. But I do think he was a 1st-round prospect. And they also drafted Donovan Ezuraku, which I think will be an absolute monster. The Cowboys, they have a very interesting D-line where they added guys like veterans like Dante Fowler, who had over 10 sacks last season. They have Sam Williams coming off of an ACL injury, I believe, where he was out just about the entire year, which was hopefully that year where he would have taken the next step. They also drafted Marshawn Nealon last year out of the 2nd round. So hopefully that pass rush along Michael Parsons will be good, and we'll finally have that final kind of other number 2 edge rusher without DeMarcus Lawrence, as he was out for most of the year last year due to an injury he suffered in week 3. So you definitely do hope that at least one of those guys can become a bright spot of that defense. But the Cowboys also, they added some linebackers like Jack Sanborn, Kenneth Murray. They traded for Kyer Elam. I think Sanborn's a pretty good player, and I think he'll kind of fill that hole that DeMar and Overshown will leave for quite a bit this season. But overall, the reason that I have the Cowboys in third is that I really just don't trust that running attack. They do have Matt Eberflus, so I do think the defense will be quite good. But you also have to take into account you don't know how Brian Schottenheimer is going to be running his offense. It could be great, and he could be an absolutely awful head coach. There's just so much unknown with the Dallas Cowboys, which, because of that, I would put their floor somewhere around 7-10, but I think their ceiling's not high in between their floor. I think that they have a ceiling of about 11-6, and I just kind of think that they're going to be in between there, and I think at max they make it to the divisional round. But quite honestly, I don't even think they win a wild card game this year. And next up, at second place, this is highly debated because oftentimes the NFC East doesn't have back-to-back winners, but I think it'll be the Washington Commanders. They have Jaden Daniels. Obviously, that was a big talking point this entire season, and they did a lot to really shore up that offense. They added Deebo Samuel. They drafted Josh Connerly to hopefully play right tackle. Unfortunately, their star all-pro right guard Sam Cosmi will be out for a majority of the start of the season due to suffering a torn ACL. So they're moving Andrew Wiley from right tackle to right guard, where I'm not sure quite how he'll fit. But they also have Nick Algoretti at left guard, who does give me some worries, but they also have Brandon Coleman as a backup left tackle. They acquired Laramie Tunsil from the Texans, who, if he can get those false start penalties, which were very frustrating as a Houston fan last year, I think he'll be a really great addition. And Brandon Coleman, I think, can slot in just about any of the positions on the offensive line. So they've got all these great things about them, but why do I kind of have them at second? Well, their defense deeply worries me. They do have a good linebacking core in Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu, who I think really elevated that defense, but I really don't trust this team's pass rush. Their leading pass rusher is Dorrance Armstrong, former Cowboy, who I do think is fine, but he shouldn't be your premier guy. Besides him, they have Dietrich Wise from the Patriots, who's very much so more of a veteran, I feel like, and a designated pass rusher. They also have Jacob Martin, and just guys that I don't think are going to particularly start. I think they kept Cleveland Farrell. They don't really have like that number one breakout guy who's going to be consistently bringing pressure. And you know, Frankie Luvu does always have his sacks. He does drop down and try and disrupt backfield plays. But I don't think you can just rely on Frankie Luvu to bring all of your pass rush. They did improve their secondary. They added Jonathan Jones. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets moved to safety because they lost Jeremy Chin, which I was really surprised by. I thought they'd be keeping him. But they do have a bit of a hole there. I think they're starting either Will Harris right now. So I think I wouldn't be shocked to see Jonathan Jones move to safety. I think that'd be a great opportunity for him. And that would give Trey Amos a bit more time to kind of warm up as that CB3 or even CB2 with if they do choose to have either Noah Igbenogany or Mike Sanistro, who was a breakout rookie last year, as that nickel corner. But because of their defense, I do think that the Commanders have a floor of 8 and 9 if absolutely everything in the wheels completely fall off. But I do think they have a ceiling of around 12 and 5. But I don't think they will be better than the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Eagles. Now, the Eagles, they lost a few key pieces. They lost Milton Williams. They lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They lost Darius Slay. But something that has made the Eagles so good consistently is Howie Roseman as a GM and his next man up mentality. I'd been keeping an eye on, the Milton Williams and his development. And I wasn't shocked at all that he had this breakout year. And I think that we might see something similar maybe, or a bit of a build-up for it from Moro Ojimo, replacing Milton Williams on that defensive line. Obviously, they have Keely Ringo, who might be that next CB2 with Darius Slay's departure and Quinyon Mitchell as CB1. They drafted Andrew Mukaba, who I think could be a very good starting free safety or strong safety. I think he could play either side of the safety line. And then they also drafted Jahad Campbell, who I thought was an absolute steal, and I can't believe that he fell as far as he did. But he will miss, I think, most of training camp, but he should be ready by the start of the season. But I think he was an absolute steal, and I think he'll start pretty early on with Nakobe Dean, most likely missing the start of the season due to suffering a late injury. Their offensive line, as always, is completely amazing. Right now they have an open competition at right guard. I think it'll either be anyone in between Tyler Steen, Matt Pryor, who they signed, or Kenyon Green, who they traded from the Texans to acquire. The Eagles do have this kind of innate ability at unlocking hidden talents from offensive linemen, like they did with Mekhi Becton last year. And so maybe that's what they'll hope to get out of Kenyon Green. I mean, they did trade their starting safety for him, so I do think that they see some potential out of the former first-round pick. But based on what he did in Houston, he really did not show flashes like Mekhi Becton at least was able to provide in New York. So I definitely think we'll have to see. I do think Tyler Steen ends up being the starting right guard, however. And then obviously their entire offense, they have Saquon, they have Jalen, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. We thought Dallas Goedert might get traded for a bit, but honestly, I think that team is so well-rounded. And I think the Eagles have a floor of, I think 9-8 would be kind of pushing. I think 10-7 is really their floor, barring injuries. And I think they have a ceiling of anywhere up around maybe 15-2. I think the Eagles are going to be a great team, and I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, if they go to the Super Bowl again, and they are my pick to go to the Super Bowl representing the NFC this year. But there we go. That is our first kind of interdivision ranking. I appreciate any of you who do end up getting to see this. I'll try and get this edited and have it out pretty quickly. But thank you for joining in to PM Sports Talks. I'm your host, Paul Miranda, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.